Welcome to another episode of Rich Dad Stockcast, where we help you navigate the world of investing and financial education. I'm your host, Denney, and today we have a topic that can make a significant difference in your portfolio. 5 ways to profit from a market crash. Now, before we get started, remember to like, subscribe, and leave your comments below. Your feedback helps us to bring you more of the content that you want to hear. And don't forget to visit stockcastbonus.com for free access to valuable educational resources to boost your financial knowledge. Joining us today is Rich Dad expert Andy Tanner. Andy, welcome back to the show.
Del, so good to be with you here. We have so much fun together. You and I have known each other for a long time, and I said this on the last episode. I'll say it again. Just working with you and being able to share ideas with you and share questions, just a delight. So it's just great to be here. It's a great day and a great day to be grateful, and a great time to talk about how to make money in crashes, because I think people are going to find that's information they're going to want to have very soon.
Very soon. This is a topic that I love and hate all at the same time, because who wants to crash? But it's important to educate yourself. And so let's just jump into it, Andy. What are the 5 ways investors can profit from a crash?
Well, I think there's several. There's actually a lot more than 5. But I think the first thing that I really love, first and foremost, the premier skill that I think makes someone rich and crash is something called delta hedging. And so we could do 20 hours on that. Delta hedging is a big deal. Another one that I really like is the protective put. You can use an options insurance. We can talk about that one. Another one I like is actually selling a put in a crash. And so that's a great way to acquire things. If a person is that sophisticated, another way is to simply find value that exists that has become detached from price. That's another way to do it. And probably the way that would be my least favorite is what everyone thinks professional investors do, and they do some of it, and that's take a short position. That's unlimited risk. It's one of the riskiest things you can do. If you're good at it, it's something that can make you money. Obviously, short positions make money. But the other 4 before that are really, they're my favorites. And I think in preparation for, what we're thinking will be the everything bubble, when the everything bubble pops and the chickens come home to roost, which will happen for sure. Buffett has already said it's going to happen. I'm saying unabashedly that it's going to happen. My personal strategy of all of those will be in that order. I'll definitely delta hedge will be the most important thing I'll be prepared to do. I've did protective puts in COVID that were just some of the best. I get stimulated thinking about a crash. I mean, all of those things I've done, all of them. And I'll continue to do them, and I'll continue to work on doing them even better than I've done them in the past. My main focus right now as an investor is that risk management. It's what we're after. So that's what we're going to do.
And I remember when I was first learning about the stock market and trading, and one of the big things that stood out in my mind, you made a comment a long time ago that how stocks go down faster than they go up.
Yeah, there's that old saying that the bulls go up the stairs and the bears jump out the window.
And, there you go. Right?
And so the elevator goes down faster than it goes up. Gravity will do that.
That it will. And when you're education, you know how to make money, whether stocks go up, down, or sideways. So let's get into the very first one, delta hedging. What is it? How do we use it? How does it work during a crash?
This is jargon. One of the things that I learned from Robert Kiyosaki is to be very cautious as a teacher when you start throwing out jargon. And so, often delta in the mathematical world, it's about changing. It's about, what is the delta, right? How much weight did you lose? How much did you change? And so if a guy lost 10 pounds, that's his delta. If they gained 10 like I did, that's your delta. And so what delta hedging really means is a hedge. In the old days, they had these things called hawthorn bushes. And they were hedges in Europe. And if you had a castle and you thought dynastically and you were going to have your kingdom and your royal line for 500 years, walls don't last a long time, but hedges can regrow and be planted, and a hawthorn bush will grow 3 meters thick and 3 meters high, and they have thorns, this big. In World War II, they would stop a tank. That's how tough they were. So they have these spades, huge spades. They welded on the front. They call them rhino tanks because they had these spades in the front in order to get through these hawthorn bushes. And Shakespeare is the guy that I've credited in coining the term to lurch, which is offense, and to hedge, which is defense. And he said to lurch to hedge in one of his writings. And so that idea of defense, of hedge. So when you say delta hedging, that means we're going to play defense against a movement or a change in the market that is severe. And what I love is the idea of something's called delta neutral. So I am going to take time to be a little bit. I don't like being this pedantic. I'm a teacher, but I don't like acting like one. But I am going to. This is a life-changing skill. We always say go to stockcastbonus.com. You can get resources that put you on the pathway to learn this type of stuff. So one of the problems with a crash is everyone thinks, should I sell now? And that is a stupid thing to do. We want to buy assets and we want to own assets. We don't want assets leaving the asset column in fear. That's not what we do, because assets don't burn to the ground like a house does. Assets have a price change. The underlying, think about a company like, I always use Coca-Cola because Buffett likes it. The only company I own that is younger than me is Apple. It's the only one. Exxon's been around longer than I have. Heinz Ketchup's been longer than dozens of Coke's been around since the 1800s. The drink, not the powder. It's been around forever. So these things are resilient through the Depression, through 9/11, through subprime meltdowns, through pandemics. They're resilient. The only thing is their price drops, but the company doesn't go out of business. These are good. You can't kill Coca-Cola. Are you kidding me? You can't do it. So the idea of selling that stuff and paying a capital gains tax at 20% is crazy. And you don't know exactly how, the timing of that stuff is tough. When exactly do you sell and when do you buy? So rather than playing capital gains, tax problems, and all this, look, keep your assets and let that price fall. What you do to delta hedge is picture a teeter-totter like this. And the teeter-totter, is level, starts out level like this. And if this one goes up 1 foot, this one goes down 1 foot, and your net delta is 0. And if this one goes up another foot, this one goes down a foot, your net delta is still 0. So imagine I have two investments, and this one, and let's say this is, let's say you have $200 total with these two investments. Well, if I set it up correctly, if this one goes from 100 to 101, and this one falls to 99, still have $200. If this one goes to 102 and this one goes to 98, I still have $200. If this one falls 50, or this one falls 50 and this one gains 50, I still have $200. So as you set up your portfolio, is all you do is you add leveraged instruments that was one goes up, the other goes down. Now, I know this is a long-winded question, but you asked. and most people have experienced this. Most people have already done this. They just didn't do it in the stock market. It's called home insurance. Is that you have a value of a home that costs a lot of money, and then you have this little insurance policy that costs a little money, but you're now delta hedged, because as the house starts on fire, the value of the house begins to drop and burn away, but the value of your claim on that insurance compensates for that amount. So you have this teeter-totter effect. As the house burns down in value, the claim you make is now equal to what the house used to be. But the reason delta hedging is better in the stock market is the companies don't burn down. They regenerate. Imagine this. Imagine your house burns down and you collect, you got $1 million home, boom, and you got $1 million insurance policy. So you cash in the insurance policy. So now you got $1 million in this hand. You got a burnt down house. What if that house regenerated automatically? Now you keep the $1 million and you could go buy another house. Well, that's exactly how delta hedging works. It is the most exciting opportunity in the world, because what happens is there's two things it does for you. It gives you emotional stability, and it also makes you rich if it crashes. So we're riding along and we're having stocks go up, but more importantly, we're getting cash flow that's not interrupted, which is another reason you don't sell your stocks. Because if you sell your stocks, you lose your dividend and you can't write your covered options anymore. So selling stocks cuts off your income. You're selling a golden goose. You sell your golden goose, you don't get any eggs anymore. So you got to keep those eggs pumping. But the other part is there's an emotional stability to it, to just go neutral. And what that means is when stuff hits the fan, say, look, I'm not going to mess with my net worth. I'm just going to let my net worth be the same. And I'll bring in these hedges. I'll bring in this insurance to where if my portfolio drops, I get paid and my wealth remains the same, right? It's called delta neutrality. That no matter which way it goes, they're always going to be opposing. And there's a skill to doing that. There's a skill to figuring out how to get that balance to be delta neutral. And that way I can just take, I can still write my options and I can still get my dividends and I can still keep everything. All my time decay is intact. And I just relax and I let the market settle. Well, if the market doesn't settle and it drops, right, and my hedges go up in value, this is beautiful because now I'm flush with new cash. I haven't lost any of my shares. They just cost less. I can take that cash, buy more shares, and they all rise again together, and you double your wealth. I mean, essentially is how, like, if you look at Buffett and even guys on my team like Corey Holliday, the times where you look back and you really nailed it is when stocks were on sale. So why would you be afraid of a crash? Are you afraid of Black Friday, Dell? Are you afraid that around Christmas time that they're going to go on sale and you're going to get great deals on the things you really want to buy? Well, a black swan is much better than a Black Friday because the things are going to get cheap. It's shooting fish in a barrel. This happens in mass. Deals are everywhere. The companies are still good. They're just prices suck for a while. And actually, for a buyer, the prices are awesome. So that's, basically delta hedging is building that teeter-totter, having the peace of mind of insurance just as you insure your home. And you can start that process at the first signs of trouble very, very early. And the only thing you lose is the upside of capital gain because you're protecting yourself from a downside. You say, look, all right, I'm not going to care about, equities going up or down for the next little while. Just going to put antacid on the whole thing, go neutral, and keep my cash flow. Now, this is sophisticated somewhat. Learning it takes time. But that's delta hedging. And I think that's the number one way to get rich as a stock investor is to have a great hedge that is leveraged, that makes you flush with cash, that compensates you for any loss in your equities. But don't sell your equities. Take that cash and now use it to buy more at the low prices. So when things recover, you have even more assets that are going up in value and more golden, more geese to lay more golden eggs. So it's not that tough to conceptualize, I hope, but that's how delta hedging works. So we just spent half the show on one question, but that skill is, if you're asking me what I'm working on to get better at, everyone can get better at it. No matter if you've been in the market 30 years, you can still get better at it. And as I look at what I see coming down and the storm clouds I see, my number one thing that I'm teaching and the number one thing I tell my students, learn how to delta hedge, man.
I'm with you on that. Now, the second thing that you mentioned was protective puts, and we'll get to that in just a second. I think maybe we talk about maybe Mark Cuban with protective puts. He made a lot of money from that. Made a lot of money using protective puts. So let's get into that here in just a second. Let's go to break.
So far, it's been great. I needed a source where I could really enrich my education through stocks. I didn't really have an avenue for it, and it's helped me a lot. The simplicity has really gotten me on the track to where I enjoy the learning as well as it's really solidifying in my mind. And like, they're not just trying to sell you something, they really care about the people that are in the course, and they really do care about you and your personal goals, and what you want to do is to help you and your family and whatever your goals are in life through that. So it's really been great.
Welcome back to this episode of Rich Dad Stockcast. Again, our topic is 5 ways to profit from a market crash. Now, before we get back to Andy, remember to like, subscribe, and leave your comments below. Your feedback helps us to bring you more of the content that you want to hear. And don't forget to visit stockcastbonus.com for free access to valuable educational resources to boost your financial knowledge. All right, so let's get back to our topic. Now, we're talking about different ways that we can profit when the market crashes. We talked about delta hedging. Now, let's talk about protective puts. You've mentioned that. And we've also mentioned Mark Cuban and how he made some money using protective puts. Let me just tee up with that. What's your thoughts on protective puts?
Well, when you have a portfolio that has a broad array of equities, you own a lot of stocks, we can do something called beta weighting, where we kind of get a counterweight and delta hedge the whole thing. We get one investment that handles the whole thing. But Cuban didn't have that. Cuban had one stock, basically. He sold his company, broadcast.com, to Yahoo for stock, and he had a 6-month vesting period where he couldn't sell. In other words, they said, look, we'll give you, $5.7 billion in stock. I think it was $5.7 billion. Don't owe me that, but I think that's what it was. We'll give you $5.7 billion in stock, but you got to hold it for 6 months before you sell it. And he's like, man, I think Yahoo stock's in trouble. We're going to have a tech bubble of 2000 burst here. So he took all the money he had, and he basically said, look, if I have 5.7 billion at risk and I could lose half of that or more in a crash, I'm going to buy insurance on it. And what it basically does is it locks in your sell price. It gives you the choice to sell at a certain price, hence the term option. Another word for option that starts with a C is choice. And so you pay some money, and it locks in your ability to sell the stock at a high price, even if it goes down low. In other words, another investor commits to buy it from you because you paid him to do it. You basically said, look, I'll pay you this premium. You're now obligated to buy this at a certain high price at my choosing. And if the stock goes up higher, I don't have to sell it to you. But if the stock goes down, I can now sell it at the high price, no matter how low it goes. And that's an amazing thing, because as you think about stocks or real estate or anything else, the defining business, the crypto, the defining characteristic of markets is unpredictability. You could make that argument. It's very difficult to time things. And to have an instrument that guarantees your sell price, that gives you total choice of whether or not you want to sell at that price, no matter what happens, that type of stability demands our attention, and it demands our education efforts to learn about it. The ability, I used protective puts in COVID because I didn't want to. I had positions that I had acquired. I felt were already pretty low prices. And so I used that mechanism to say, look, if this thing tanks, I want the right to sell it at this amount. And what happens is, as those stocks fall, the value of those options are through the roof. I mean, think about it. Let's say you didn't own the stock, and you say, I want the right to sell, Apple at 200 a share. And you don't even own the Apple. You just own the right to sell it in case you wanted to buy it later. You have the option. You have the choice. So you spend this tiny little amount of money saying, I want the right to sell Apple at 200. And then Apple falls to $100 in a crash. You can now buy it at 100 and sell it at 2, which means the intrinsic value of that option is now $100. You don't even have to touch the stock at that point. Someone will buy that contract for you. It's liquid. The market makers will honor it. You never have to even touch the stock. So you can even, that wouldn't be a protected put. That's more opportunistic. But if you do own the stock, you can buy insurance for it. So I can't imagine that people wouldn't, if you're going to be in a market that's unpredictable and there's an instrument that allows you to guarantee your sell price or your buy price, why would you not spend every moment required to become fluent and be a practitioner and be proficient in those types of things, but that's me as the education advocate, telling people to get educated, and I have to kind of just shrug my shoulders and say, your money, you do what you want, right? I mean, I'm not going to beg people to learn about protected puts if they don't have an interest just in what I've taught in this podcast and introduced. If you're new to it, you should be all over that, but no one's going to make you prepare other than you. No one's going to plead and beg because it's not my money. I'm going to take care of my own.
Yeah. And I think going back to Mark Cuban, what a smart strategy was, hey, I have this large investment.
Brilliant.
How do I protect it in case it goes down? And maybe that's something we should think about today, right?
I say it's brilliant, and I, of course he's a brilliant guy. I mean, he's richer than I am, and so he's brilliant. But in a way, it's not really that brilliant. It's more like it'd be like me coming to you if your house burnt down and saying, God, Del, your house burnt down. Did you have insurance? And you say, yeah, I had fire insurance. Oh, you're a genius. How did you know your house was going to burn down? You're just a genius for buying.
True.
Yeah, well, you were prudent, right? In fact, actually, I would almost assume you had insurance. And if you told me your house burned down and you didn't have insurance, I go, well, that dude's an idiot, right? How do you have an investment that large? And, that comes to 401k protection, because people will insure. Let's say your house is $1 million and your 401k is $1 million. You're insuring your house. You're paying money every month to make sure that thing don't burn down at your expense. Well, which is more likely to burn down the next 5 years, your house or your 401k? So, is it brilliant, or is it just common sense that if you have an unpredictable market, real estate's unpredictable, well, you buy insurance. That helps mitigate that unpredictability, right? It makes people feel, I feel 100% safe. I bought some protected puts on Exxon, and when Exxon started to plummet during COVID, I kept my Exxon. I bought my protected puts. My protected puts went up in value. My Exxon went down. I kept my Exxon while it was low. I sold those puts that I bought for a boatload of cash, bought more stocks, and then Exxon doubled on its own again. And now I had more money to buy more assets. So to me, it's common sense as much as brilliant.
Well, one thing I've noticed about common sense is that it isn't so common, right? So a lot of people aren't doing that. Now, I do want to, the second thing that you talked about, we had 5 ways to make money in the market crash, buying that insurance policy, if you will. But I also want to create that dividing line on selling puts as well and profiting from puts.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between the two?
Well, you buy your protected puts before a crash or at the beginning of a crash, and you sell your cash secured puts at the bottom. And so what happens is there's just bargains everywhere in a crash, bargains everywhere. So let's say, Apple goes from $100 to, or from $200 to $100. That's a bargain for Apple, right? And the only reason the price is down isn't because they don't know how to build an iPhone anymore. It's because people are panicking and worrying about their money. And so they sell the asset because and it causes the price to go down, supply and demand. They still know how to build an iPhone. They still know how to do Apple Pay and Apple TV and all the other things that have totally taken over our lives. And so you think to yourself, well, this is a buying opportunity. Well, if I sell a put at a low price, now I'm obligated to buy low if a person wants me to. So I'll say, all right, well, let's say it's 100 now. I know that's a bargain. Let's say it goes to 90. I'll promise to buy it at 90 if it goes another 10. Now I get that cash, and if it goes down below 90, I get to buy it. If it doesn't, I just keep the cash. So it's a great way to get paid when things are already on sale, to get paid to buy them if they go even more on sale. And so when a person is opportunistic and they don't quite know where the bottom is, but they know it's a pretty good deal as is, just go a little lower. And if it hits it, you get to buy it and you got paid to do so. And if it starts to bounce back up without you, well, you got paid anyway. So I love, like, anyone that's been in our weekly Mentor Club knows that every time Noah Davidson, who runs the Mentor Club, anytime he shows a stock that just, kind of had a rough go of it, I'm like, man, I'm selling puts on that. I'm going to get paid to buy it. I'm selling puts. I mean, it's like automatic. It's like a Pavlovian response for me to say this is on sale and I'm going to get paid to buy it. Think about that, how nutty that is. 401k people pay money to buy their equities at a high price. Like right now, the people in a 401ks, they're paying more money for less earnings than really ever before. There's only been one period of time in the 2000s, 20 years ago, where you paid more, and it's getting close. I mean, you're almost paying more and getting less. You're getting less shares and you're getting less earnings at the highest prices in the market, and you're paying fees to acquire those expensive assets. What I'm talking about is buying them on a sale and getting paid. Imagine your life, how that changes. If for 40 years you pay fees to acquire your assets, and how that kills your compounding, or if you get paid to buy your assets and how that fuels your compounding. To me, that is a no freaking brainer. Is if you can get paid to buy things on sale cheaper than they are even on the sale price, man, load up, baby, load up. Take that money from your puts you made on the way down and then get paid even more by promising to buy low. You got a guarantee to sell high and you make a promise to buy low and you get paid for that. That's a instantly click and get paid. So
how awesome is that? And don't get me
it,
started
it,
on the fees.
yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Now, what about let's go to our fourth way to make money, and it can be sound a little counterintuitive, but buying value stocks during a crash. Can you
It's probably
explain why it's
what
profitable?
It's what Buffett does. There's this idea of what we call fundamentals, which is the strength of a company, and an idea called technicals, which is the motions of the price, and these become detached constantly. Often people pay way, way, way more than a stock is worth, and some people sell it for way, way less than it's worth. It's just panic. There's distress. This happens in real estate all the time. We call them distressed sellers. A person gets a divorce. They just want out. Their life sucks. I got to get away from this raging beast that I married. We got to liquidate this house, and I just want to be away from her. So I'll take way less than I would, if I have to hold it for 10 months. I'll just take way less because I just want to be done. Or a person loses a job, or they're going to bankruptcy, or whatever the reason is, they want cash. Well, the same things happens in stocks. People freak out. They see it starting to go down and they sell for no other reason than it's going down. They don't look at the fundamentals. They don't look at the value of that company. All they look is they get fixated on the price. And as that price plummets, they panic and they don't really think it's going to go back up or what have you, or they're leveraged and they're forced to sell, which happens a lot in real estate. Guy gets underwater, has to sell. Happens in stocks. Buffett talks about the tide going out and you find out who's swimming naked. Those opportunities are huge. So if you are a fundamental analyst, which is the first pillar of investing, and you see those prices go on sale, now you start looking at the strength of that company. Actually, you say, man, this thing's on sale. I'll give you a great one. Kraft Heinz is at $70 when Buffett buys, does that Kraft Heinz merger. He paid $70 for it. And they overstated the value of some of the brands they acquired. And that didn't prove to be the case in terms of earnings. And so the SEC went to him and said, you really haven't proven on your balance sheet that the name brands you bought are really worth this much. And so they have this thing called impairment costs, which actually shows up as an expense that isn't real. In other words, by simply devaluing the brand, saying, okay, it's worth $1 billion, it's only worth 500 million, that would be a $500 million expense that isn't real. They just listed on their balance sheet as money that left the company, and now the brand isn't worth as much. So it's really a phantom number of what they thought it was worth and what it wasn't worth. It really was just on paper. So with that, the stock plummeted to 30, and it's sitting at 30 today. But I bought that thing at 30, and I've gotten dividends and calls. I've written on it ever since, and I'm thrilled with it. So I said, man, if Buffett bought it at 70, I can pick it up at 30. You don't get better deal than Buffett very often. And, it has its problems. It has a little bit of debt, and the Ozempic, no one's eating food anymore because everyone's on Ozempic. So the food companies are like, man, Ozempic's killing us. But it doesn't matter because it's cash flow. It's not about capital gain anyway. And if I can get a dividend for a $30 stock and not pay 70 for it, that's a goose that I'll buy. It's not a home run, but it's a nice, Buffett still has it. It's a nice company.
I
They
like
make
that.
good stuff.
Now, what about the fifth item that you talked about, and that's shorting stock?
That's just you got to be careful with that. If you're going to short stock, you realize that the going long comes from the word long term. In other words, when you go long, you plan to own something for a long time. You think it's going to be around. But if you're going short, you think the company's not going to be around a long time. And so it really has to do with time frame. Going long means I believe it'll be around a long time. Going short means I think it's only going to be around for a short time. And so I'm positioning myself for a demise, a short time of being in that stock. Well, with longs, your risk is what you paid for it. It's how low it can go, which is zero. So you're risking 100% of your money. But with shorts, it can go to infinity because you lose money as it goes up and there's no upper limits. So there's a literal, I guess it's figurative because there is no literal infinite number, but figuratively and theoretically, you have no limit to the amount of money you can lose if it gets away from you. So if you're going to short, you got to have exit strategy. You got to use options again to protect those because when you get that short position on, you've got to know where the lifeboat is and you've got to draw a line in the sand when you're wrong. And that's where people get in trouble is those shorts can get away from them. And, you saw what happened to the hedge fund people that were shorting GameStop. They got what they deserved. Because they weren't smart about it. So I would say that, there's five, we listed 5 ways. There's more, by the way. You can do spread trades and there's all kinds of different ways you can make money on the demise or on a drop in price. But the one the one I won't do, the fifth one is all of those others I will do in a crash, all 4 of them. That fifth one, which is crazy because that's the one people think of first. That's the one I rarely do. We'll do it in the Mentor Club once in a while, but we have measures in place to protect ourselves against that infinite theoretical risk.
All right,
so that's ways. I want to talk about one more risk, and I don't want to have a rant, but I need to speak to our listeners just in a word of warning. There's something I've noticed for a while. When I see it, I try not to let it bother me. We live in a world every day where people are self-serving and often dishonest. And I think, I look at my parents who are getting older and I think, there's someone going to call my mother's phone today and they're going to try and get her information or credit card and they're going to try and scam my mom today. They're going to try and do that. And they live somewhere in a far country and they're detached from the humanity of it and they're going to scam my mom. And I've seen that happen where people will try to take the good name of Rich Dad and the good name of the Cashflow Academy and the good name of the Stockcast, and they will take the trust that people have in that channel and they'll exploit it for their own gain. So when we say like and subscribe, do like and subscribe. When we say comment. But I've seen phishing in the comments in 2 ways. I've seen scams where someone will say, "Oh, I had a great experience with so and so," and I say, "Well, who are you?" And their screen name is indiscernible. Don't know who this person is. They're recommending someone, and I will just tell you, particularly in the crypto space, I had a lady reach out to me and say, "Andy, you seem like a nice guy. I wonder if I could get some help. I heard about this and I need some help." And this lady invested in a fake company that claimed they're in England for crypto. And, long story short, her money's gone. I mean, all of it. And they even had her go into debt. And I said, "Do you have a daughter?" And broke my heart to tell this lady, there's a person who's in prison that I do know who they caught over $100 million simply exploiting the people's trust being associated with Rich Dad. And I had never invested with him. Robert never invested with him. So I'm just going to be very clear on something. If you want to do better with taxes, you talk to Tom Wilwright and you learn there. If you want to do better with asset protection, you talk to Garrett Sutton. If you want to do better with real estate, you talk to Kenny McElroy. And if you want to learn about stocks, I'm happy to help. The other possibility when I see some of these people, I remember I was at a seminar once to go hear a credible speaker, and I was there to learn from a credible speaker and learn. And I went to the restroom at the break, and a dude starts pitching me. I'm at a urinal, and a dude starts pitching me on his thing. And I thought, if you're not a scam, you're pretty lame if you're trying to come and drum up business in the bathroom at a break. If a person is trying to drum up business, I would just say run, because they're either going to fish and take someone's money, or they can't stand on their own 2 feet and they have to ride Robert Kiyosaki's coattail. So I'm not going to delete those comments, because I think part of financial education is having the discipline not to chase shiny objects and to learn what is credible. But I think the skill of recognizing scams is an important one to have. We could delete those comments, but I also believe in this free speech. And if you're going to have free speech, you got to learn to know what a scam is. So since we were talking about downward markets and a little bit of risk today, I thought I'd bring that up because I do read those comments, and I'm not going to say anything, but I would encourage people to shut that stuff down. I'm not going to. I'll let the community do that. But if someone drops someone's name, you freaking run and tell those guys, hey, if you didn't come here to learn and you came here to try to drum up business and you aren't strong enough or popular enough or successful enough to have your own podcast, then just get the hell out of here. And, you can see how I feel. I just hate the scammers because they don't have any integrity. And that's not a way to be successful. So just a word to the wise and a warning that I don't want to have you reach out to me and say, hey, what this, no, baloney. These guys are smart. These guys are clever, and they'll take people's money. So that's my little rant on that.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Andy, and thank you for protecting the community. We really appreciate that. And so this is a wrap for today's episode of Rich Dad Stockcast. We hope you found our discussion on 5 ways to profit from market crash insightful. And again, a big thank you to Andy Tanner for sharing his expertise with us. Now, remember, whether you're just starting to save or nearing retirement, the key is to stay informed and educated. And just like Andy said, speaking of education, don't forget to visit stockcastbonus.com for free resources that can help you on your financial journey. And so again, if you've enjoyed today's episode, please make sure you like and subscribe and leave us an honest comment. Your feedback helps us to improve and bring us more of what you want to hear. So share this podcast with your friends and family to help them make better financial decisions too. Thanks for tuning into the Rich Dad Stockcast. Until next time, stay smart, stay invested, and take control of your financial future. I'm Denney. We'll see you on the next episode.
Goodbye, everyone.
This podcast is a presentation of Rich Dad Media Network.